Okay, so a while ago, we talked about. I mentioned that I might somehow document my building of the high grade high new Gundam because I thought because you were talking about using more techniques than just basic assembly, and I mentioned that I've been working on how to try to make that as easy as possible. This guy right here, New Gundam version Ka, the big Christmas kid of 2012 or whatever it was, he was made entirely using the same methods. He just has more pieces. So he does look better than this kit will look most likely, but that's mostly because he's humongous and has 900 parts or something instead of 150. But he has a nice presence, and when I like a kit but I don't live for it, I think I'm going to use this method more often. So what I've done so far is I've gone all the way through the kit and did the basic assembly, all that shit that the guy in the apron talks about. You clip the pieces off and you sand the little nub and all that, and then if you find any imperfections, you get rid of those or whatever, and you put you put like the head together, and then you go, oh, it looks pretty good, and then you take it all apart, and you have a bag for every color. So I put all the blue shit in there, and then this gross iridescent metallic color, all that went in there, and all the white stuff is sitting around because I'm going to reference it. So some of these pieces, such as this, which is rear skirt, that's all one piece, easy. Some of these are more than one piece, such as this big lower leg section. I felt that whenever I see two pieces that look significant, I glue them, even though they don't need to be glued, because I don't like things moving, because sometimes it fucks up the paint. You don't really have to worry about it, but whatever. And a piece like this, it holds the dude up, it's his lower leg, so I glued it. I used Tamiya extra thin. You can also use Great Plains thin, but when you start, that's a CA glue, never mind. Plastic cement, okay, is the kind of cement that melts the plastic slightly. The reason why it comes in different thicknesses is because two things. One, it tends to act faster when it's thinner, and also it tends to get in every little crook when it's thinner. And when it's thicker, sometimes you want the action to be slower, and you want it to have enough surface tension and gumminess to sort of help hold the part together. But if you use this, and then you squeeze it together, any seam that you have will almost fill itself right then. And if you have like a clamp or something, you won't have hardly any seam left. A piece on here that did require some sanding. This is the like wing binder thing. You should have two of them, and the funnels stick out the bottom. This piece in the section in the middle, you can see how it's pretty ugly. But there's going to be another blue piece that goes over the top of this, so you don't give a shit about that. The only part I had to sand was the very tip. Inside there, I didn't bother because fuck it, I don't care. But sometimes I'll go through the bother of like finishing that off inside, and that's not really worth it. So for most people, upper leg is still somewhat assembled because it had to be glued together. I felt that it had to be glued together, so it's all one piece. The polycap is in there, and when we paint this, the polycap will end up white. Who gives a shit? I think it looks fine. If you don't like that, it's actually pretty easy because paint doesn't really stick to polycaps. You could take a hobby knife and just kind of scrape it off the polycap where you want it to look like polycap. I don't know. I like polycaps, by the way. I don't know why everyone doesn't. Speaking of which, this piece isn't supposed to go in there. I cut my finger today thanks to a carpet installer, so that's why I have that on me. So this piece would go like that, and I guess really, now I think about it, yeah, there's really no reason why I couldn't leave that like that. Have one less piece to paint. So anyway, what's going to happen with all of this is now that they're all separated by race, oh, that piece has a polycap pen still too. I'm going to prime them all, one baggie at a time, paint them all, and then they'll all still be different colors, but they'll all still be painted. And then you put the thing back together again. And in the process, using details, you know, the lines and whatever, the decals, the lines. We'll get to that later. But this is a way to break a complex task down into smaller, more foolproof tasks. I think I've said everything I'm going to say for now. Yeah, we're not going to paint it like this. The gun and whatnot might get more complicated as we go on, because the way they illustrate the gun is it's mostly white, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they illustrate the gun as mostly white in that picture there. And then they give you this thing, which is this shitty iridescent metallic crap for the gun. So more complex things will happen there, and actually I should probably show the gun. Actually, what I should show is these auxiliary fuel tanks. Now, the nice guys at Bandai have made these fuel tanks a little bit easier to build than they used to be, because the end is its own piece. And the reason why that's an improvement on the past, doesn't stick very well, by the way, will have to be glued. The reason why that's an improvement on the past is because now these were half round. There's only a seam on this, and now you don't have to worry about the seam on the end. It makes it a little easier and a little less obvious if you don't do a great job. But in this case, it's most important in order to get these fuel tanks to look good and round and smooth and not be obviously fucked up and made from two halves. First of all, this kind of plastic cement, which is not an adhesive, it is a cement that liquefies the plastic and makes it stick to itself. You put enough of that on there, and when you put it together, pay very close attention to how they're aligned. Like the seam was right up on the top, so I would squeeze it from the top and the bottom together and roll a little bit in my fingers to make sure that it's lined up perfectly. And then it couldn't hurt to use a clamp. I use these things, these horribly overpriced French things, but like Daft Punk kind of. They're weird. They just squeeze them like that and then they stick, and they're freaking fantastic. I use something like that to apply pressure the entire time, and it drives. I'd give it like a day, and then when it's done, it's pretty easy to sand it relatively smooth. When you're sanding things, these days, I prefer to use a couple of solutions. One is these sanding sticks, and they're just like some sort of a foam substrate in there. So they're firm, but they're not like files or whatever. They're soft. And the other thing I've been using lately is this way more overpriced than the clamps, Flexi File, which is just this is a piece of sanding film that's had its tabs folded over, and then it's interchangeable grades. Put that on there. And then this is very flexible. So when you're doing something round, it's pretty handy. You don't have to worry about grinding something flat when you don't want to. It's pretty easy. Start with a heavy one. We'll go through all the grades, and it should be pretty easy to make these look relatively decent round. Since they're still white plastic, you can't tell what they really look like. Once they get primed, we'll see how good of a job I really did. Right now, it's just a blob of plastic. That's about it. I'll make another video. Oh, I want to talk about these stickers. The kit from Bandai comes with these two choices for stickers. Actually, I guess they supplement each other. But there's your typical foils that you get with cheap models, and then here's the becoming more popular ultra thin stickers that debuted on the Real Grade, as far as I know. I will be using none of those, and on here I will be using the green ones only. This is the green that covers up the auxiliary camera on the head and the back of the head, and there's always one there. I will not be using the eyes because they always look like shit. Sometimes they look better than other times, but one thing I paint, even if I paint nothing on the whole kit, like the Delta Gundam, I will always paint the eyes because it's easier. It just looks better. And there are ways of doing this, and those eyes are really small, but there are ways of doing this that may make it maybe easier than what you think. Yeah, Future X, I'll get to that later. But yeah, that's probably about it for now. I'll make another video later when there's some progress on the priming front.